Now we're going to do another, I'd call this a bias facing, and this is the outside of the garment, and you can see just on the outside it just has one row of stitching for the edge of the bias. There's no stitching along this edge, but you could, if you wanted to, actually put a row of pin stitching there, just to make it even on both sides. And then on the inside here, because this was a little flat section, it's actually folded under quite nicely, so I didn't do any understitching here, but potentially if you're having a bit of trouble around the curve, I could have understitched here before I turned it back and did this row of stitching. So this is on the inside. So inside facing, you can also do this so that you stitch it to the outside, stitch it to the inside and flip it to the outside, so it would be a feature on the outside, and in a contrast that might look good. And of course with this one, you actually need a 6mm seam allowance, so make sure your armholes have seam allowances. Okay, so now we're going to do this. We're going to start on the outside, so turn to the outside. And again, like before, just open it up to begin with. Now with this one here, because we actually want the bias to sit flat all the way around, I'm not going to pull on it. I'm actually going to try and ease the bias in a tiny bit. So because if you pull on it, it's actually going to make it thinner, and it's not going to sit as flat around the curves. You don't have to worry quite so much as you come up to the straight sections here. But back into the curve, just try and get a tiny bit of fullness going around that curve so this outside edge is sitting flat. Okay, snip that off, and now you can take it to the ironing board if you want to give this a good press, and when you press it, you just make sure that there was a tiny bit of the outside fabric rolling around towards the back as you go to sew. So this is quite a casual finish to a garment, so it's good for sports wear, sports clothes, things that are a bit more casual. And to even make it, that little bit sportier, I would suggest putting, like on the outside, having that extra row of stitching. Double top stitching on the outside always looks sporty. Okay, so there we go. Oops, and you can see there there's just a little bit of a curve there, but actually I don't think I'm going to worry about that too much because the seam allowance is going to take up that much. Oh, and that's the inside anyway. Okay, so this is the outside now. Actually, once that's pressed, that should be fine around that curve. So now I'm just going to match up the top edges, the folded edges of the underarm seam. Do a little back tack, and then I'm just going to go and overlock that, and then I'll come back and finish this top edge. Alright, so I've sewn up the side seam and I've overlocked it, and I've left a little tail at the top. So what we're going to do with that with the inside here is, rather than just cutting that off there, we're actually going to fold the edge under, and then we're going to put a stitch here just to hold that seam allowance down. And generally, if I was doing this, this would be in a matching colour, and the top stitching that I was doing here would be in a matching colour as well, but the black's just to help you see. So, but before I start, oh, actually what we can do is we can do this on the outside because we know where we're going to be sewing. So I'm just going to do it about 1/2 centimetre in, and just from the edge to the stitch line there. I went a little bit further than I wanted to, but you can see that that then on the inside holds that seam allowance back, and it's not going to flap around, and that overlocking is not going to come out or come undone, because, you know, if there was a raw, if I chopped the overlocking off. So it's nice and neat now, and just it's done. And there's my finish. And as I said before too, if you wanted to add another row of stitching around here, you could do that. You could even add another row in the middle as well if you wanted to be very fancy. There's your armhole done.